Hello there, good evening and compliments of the season. This is Abuja Dispatch, a special platform created to bring to your living rooms those events and issues, and indeed those characters that have shaped the entire socio-political landscape of the federal capital city Abuja in the last 1 week. Adegboyega Arogbodo is my name. Welcome back. In recent times, the advocates of restructuring in Nigeria have essentially anchored their arguments on certain misgivings and perceptions in forms of style of governance. They perceive intolerable imbalance in appointments and distribution of resources. Some even perceive the present style of governance as unitary, contrary to their yearnings for true federalism. On Deadline this week, we examine the crux of the issues for and against restructuring in the Nigerian states. Stay with us.
Restructuring has become one of the most popular languages used in the Nigerian political space today. Many politicians and enlightened citizens are calling on the federal government to restructure the country, as it will help to move the country forward, both economically and socially.
Push the envelope of federalism as far as it can go. If there are any problems in terms of constitutional interpretation, head for the Supreme Court. In the meantime, however, try and be as self-sufficient as possible. In other words, generate your own resources, and generate those resources in a way that a percentage of it cannot be cornered by the center, like that.
This is particularly so because aside rejuvenating the ailing national economy, fighting corruption and ensuring security, the ruling party, the All Progressives Congress (APC), rose to power in 2015 with a pledge to engage in true federalism and devolve powers. Some of the key recommendations of the All Progressives Congress Committee on Restructuring, as submitted to John Odige-Oyegun, the party chairman in 2018 January, are resource control, making local government an affair of states, constitutional amendment to allow merger of states, state police, state court of appeal, and independent candidacy. It's been 3 years after the recommendations.
As a civilian regime, we must not give the impression that only military establishments, governments, can fundamentally tamper with the basic structure of this nation. We must not. We are in charge today, a progressive government, a progressive regime, and I think it is proper that we show to the nation that when the people want some degree of change, we should be responsive to it.
The state government requires the approval of the federal government to carry out any project and may not go ahead with any project if denied by the federal government, even if the project is much needed by the state. As it were, the buck stops at the doorsteps of the National Assembly, as the entire process of evolving a new federal structure must be through constitutional amendment.
If restructuring, which by my own consideration is about power devolution and fiscal responsibility, can solve our problem, and is the view of the majority of Nigerians, because that's the basic requirement of democracy, that majority must always have their way. We will continue to talk, but once majority have agreed that this is the way to go, political leaders must be able to have the necessary political will to accede to the demands of the majority of Nigerians, and then we'll move along. So I believe that restructuring is not the only way of solving our problem. But even the moment at the time that we are now, majority of Nigerians and experts believe that restructuring is the way to go to solve our problems, so be it. Let's restructure. Who is afraid of restructuring? Whoever is afraid of restructuring must come up with an alternative to the demands of the other people.
We in the National Assembly really do not have any, what we call preconditions or any mindset about what should be done. We want to hear from Nigerians. Nigerians have been the people who have experienced the operation of the Constitution. Therefore, let Nigerians come out and tell us which areas of this Constitution is a living thing that need to be changed.
Giving more powers to the state will probably result in competition amongst the states, as each will try to do better than the other. This could lead to more development and innovation and increased tax yield, as all states will be dependent on their tax yields. There will hardly be embezzlement of funds because it can easily be tracked. Decentralized government may be an answer to the ongoing agitations. In a decentralized government, each state will be independent of the federal government and there will be no complaints of marginalization from any state. However, some are of the opinion that restructuring is not what the country actually needs at this moment. This is because, given the mechanics of decentralized government, powers can easily be abused.
On the contentious issue of restructuring or true federalism or devolution of powers, like you all know, this is a constitutional matter with which only the National Assembly can deal. I remain an apologetic believer in devolving power to the people, and that is why I signed the executive order granting autonomy to state legislature and judiciary. Unfortunately, this was met with some resistance at the state level and led to a more than 2 months strike action that has caused the country a lot of pain.
Restructuring is good, but with the Nigerian system, many still believe it may fail as a result of many reasons. The economy is built on oil. With restructuring, it means some states will be very poor, especially the northern states, and no political party will want to lose the support of the north because of its numerical strength. Evidently, this will make state governors dictators and lords over their territories.
Let the governors go back and let them restructure the local government, county and ward and local government areas. That's what it's supposed to be. The restructuring is for who and by who? Restructuring what? Now, Nigeria as an amalgamated country, is there for you. The constitution is very clear. Who is talking to who and for whose interest? Restructuring. Who is cheating who now?
My own restructuring is what I have said. We have to restructure our mentality. We have to restructure our mind. We have to restructure our understanding of Nigeria. What country do we want?
Like every other thing in the world, restructuring Nigeria has its own advantages and disadvantages. Therefore, there is the need for precautions by considering what the country stands to lose when it restructures.
Thanks for staying with us. For democracy to thrive seamlessly, the position of robust mass media cannot be pushed aside. After 22 years of uninterrupted democratic governance, many have strongly recommended that the Nigerian mass media needs a more comprehensive mindset for it to be a catalyst of sustaining democratic values in a plural and divided society like Nigeria. On Split Views tonight, we feature the chairman, Nigerian Union of Journalists, FCT Council, Comrade Emmanuel Ogbeche. Stay with us again. Welcome to the Split Views segments of our program, Abuja Dispatch. And on Split Views tonight, we take on the chairman, Nigerian Union of Journalists, FCT Council, Comrade Emmanuel Ogbeche. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Now, since May 29, 1999 till now, we're having 22 years of uninterrupted democratic rule. Many have commended the situation so far. Now, how will you describe the media? How have we fared in your own estimation?
Well, it's a mixed bag if you look at it, because over 2 decades now, you wouldn't expect it to be a smooth ride. You wouldn't expect it to have bumps all the way. So if you look at how successive administrations, right from Olusegun Obasanjo to Yaradua to Jonathan and to President Muhammadu Buhari now, you will see that the media has had to fare under the circumstances of the various administrations differently. You know, during the Obasanjo days, we're just coming out from military rule. So the hangover of a military dictatorship was very much, you know, in the air. And we saw it in the way that presidency interacted with the media. That was when clampdowns happened, people were arrested. Then one would have imagined that successive administrations would have built on the experience of the Obasanjo administration to say, no, this is a democracy, certain things aren't expected. The short-lived Yar'Adua administration did not experience much of that. But during Jonathan, we had instances where journalists were harassed, newspapers were seized, and then Buhari happened, and we have seen the records. You know, it has not really departed from that trajectory where journalists are arrested, media organizations are harassed, and all of that. If we take as a basis for reaching a conclusion the report of Reporters Without Borders, you know, that says that we've declined 5 places in the index of press freedom, then it tells you the whole story about how the media space has fared, you know, over these 2 decades. But by and large, I must commend the media for standing stoutly, for defending democracy, for talking about human rights, for canvassing for the rights of Nigerians in general, and for holding government accountable, which is a constitutional guarantee, by the way, to the people.
Now, talking about sustaining Nigeria's democracy, you know, some people believe that regional, geopolitical, ethnicity imperatives impact negatively, you know, on Nigeria's mass media. In our reportage, in the way we view things, that most times people rely on their geopolitical, you know, affiliations. What's your take on this?
Well, that wouldn't be a fair assessment of the Nigerian media. While we agree that there are 1 or 2 instances where the media tends to pander to certain religious and geopolitical interests. But if you look at the Nigerian media as a collective, because sometimes when people make those assumptions, it is on the basis of newspaper alone. People don't take into cognizance what the broadcast stations are doing. You understand? So if we must have a holistic assessment in terms of how we are fed, in terms of our religious biases, in terms of our political persuasions, then I think the Nigerian media has fared very well. On a scale of 1 to 10 in that regard, I would say it's a 7. That means there is room for improvement for us to be pro-Nigerian at all times. You understand? Not to give in to ethnic, religious sentiment. It does happen. We are all products of our environment. But I think the Nigerian media is acquitting itself very well in that regard.
Now, you know, keeping national interest and public interest is a necessary tool, you know, to respect by the media. How best do you think practitioners could keep to these tenets? Because most times we are more or less in between national interest and public interest.
Yes. Well, you see, that's a very interesting question. That was why I was smiling when you were asking it, because if you look generally in terms of the media ownership in this country, and you realize that most of the media, the ones that are not owned by government, the private ones are also owned by individuals that are in government or that are politically inclined, then you see that most times they are serving their personal interest, masking as national interest. That is the bottom line truth. Because when an individual owns a broadcast or a broadcast station or a newspaper house, for instance, and that individual belongs to a political party, what happens? He's going to defend the interest of the party, not necessarily the national interest. And that party interest is also his own personal interest. You understand? So we must begin to look at the ownership structure to create a buffer to ensure that professional ethics, at the end of the day, is what dominates. The professionals that run media organizations should abide by what the ethics says. Balance, fairness, hear the other side. You understand? We must put Nigeria above every other consideration. And until we get to that point, we'll continue to find a situation where these interests will continue, to crisscross. And sometimes the personal interest overwhelms the national interest. But by and large, I think it's still a process. We're still turning a curveball. 22 years isn't too much, because if you look at let me give this scenario. It's just like demolishing a house. It can take you 10 minutes to demolish a house that was taking 2 years to build. What does that tell you? That some persons may say, oh, it's 2 decades, the Nigerian media should have, matured over time. It isn't that easy. It's a process, and I think we'll get it right eventually.
Recently, the government, clamped down on Twitter.
Yes.
Many have said that, well, the media is the most affected, as it were. How do you think this whole issue should be taken by practitioners and probably by the people who are concerned with regulating the whole spectrum?
Well, let me say it was unfortunate the way the government acted. One would have imagined that it would have called for discussion with Twitter, because today you'll agree with me that any and every media organization that is worth its salt has a social media handle, especially Twitter. We do not only seek to get audience and readers on, we also seek for revenue. You understand? And the immediacy in which Twitter gives and other social media platform cannot be overemphasized. So I think the ongoing discussions between the Nigerian government and Twitter should be deepened. And I look forward to that ban being lifted as soon as possible, because the issue of freedom of expression and of the media is a constitutional guarantee that shouldn't be abridged and shouldn't be taken away. 22 years of democracy, we should have learned certain lessons. And one of the lessons I think we should have learned is tolerance. How to ensure that we do not go overboard in trying to kill a fly. So I remain persuaded that it was a bad decision, and government should work towards remedying it.
Now, to wrap it up, as a stakeholder in the profession, many people have argued, many people always challenge us out there that the journalist or the media profession is not well regulated, as we have a lot of people who are just dabbling into the game without any professional background. Now, what do you think, or what are the things that the journalist associations, are doing right now to really straighten the way people, bump into the profession just arbitrarily?
Well, first of all, we must recognize that journalism, whether print, broadcast, is very peculiar. You understand? You require people with other backgrounds and expertise to be part and parcel of it. But the fundamental issue is that of an enabling law. Some of us, and the union has continued to advocate for a media salary scale, a law that stipulates both for the practitioner and for those that invest in it. For you to establish a broadcast station, these are the minimum requirements. For you to own a newspaper, these are the minimum requirements. For you to become a practicing journalist, this is the minimum requirement. You know, just like we have for NIPRO and the rest, we require an enabling law. Because when there is legislation, that is when you can enforce it. But for now, what we do is, it is the professional grown rules and regulations by the Nigerian Union of Journalists. Now we have the Guild of Editors and all of that. That is what we are using. Self-regulation isn't enough. There is the need for proper legislation by an act of the National Assembly, so that people will understand that this isn't just about any job you work in and work out. It is a profession, and there are minimum in which you must have to be part and parcel of it.
Emmanuel Obiche is the chairman, Nigerian Union of Journalists, FCT Council. He has been our guest tonight. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
The next thing is to engage with critical stakeholders in the business environment, which we have started on both sides of the aisle. We are trying to bring together the business community between either here in Turkey or in Nigeria for them to look at the definite incentives that exist on both sides. In Turkey, it's the logistics is the problem. It's easier, for instance, to ship merchandise and commodities from the Far East to Nigeria because logistics is easy than from Turkey. Now we've engaged the stakeholders here, and they are willing to improve on the logistics in order for us to achieve the desired trade volume that the two presidents have outlined.
That is how far we can go on this week's edition of Abuja Dispatch. For further information, suggestions, and comments, you can reach us out on our various social media platforms. Thank you for allowing us to share your moment this week on Abuja Dispatch. A week from now, we'll bring you another refreshing package. Same time, same station. From all of us here, we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year ahead. Thank you and good night.